what are illustrated maps? Basically, what it suggests, but there are so many elements within an illustrated map that you can utilise to help promote your brand. So let's start by looking at an example featuring these different elements. What makes illustrated maps so fantastic is their creative nature. They don't have to be geographically accurate, which means they can be really fun, playful and quirky. You can play with scale and composition, and you can distort reality however you want to. You can choose exactly what landmarks or features to focus on, and it really draws the client's attention to what you want them to be looking at. It's completely under your control. You can use stylized symbols, quirky fonts, playful textures. Sorry. That's good. One of the best things about illustrated maps is using the various colours. You can work them with your brand. So if you've got a specific palette, certain fonts, anything stylized can help build on your brand identity, which makes it really strong for your campaign. Everything can be customized for your target market. You could ask, why not just use a Google map? Which you can. They're good for getting your clients from A to B, but there are many benefits of using stylized maps rather than the bog standard Google map. Google Maps can't match your branding. Illustrated maps can strengthen and build on your brand identity. Google Maps aren't artistically designed. There's no creative element. They can't give a sense of the location. The location that, sorry, let me just go back. There we go. Sense of the location and personality of the region. So, looking at this, what would you rather use? The importance of illustrated maps. We know that visuals have a better impact than written materials. They draw the customer's attention. And maps are a universal image. Everyone understands them. They can reach any kind of market. They show the client exactly what you want them to focus on. Printed maps in particular have greater longevity. They really enhance the user experience. When you're promoting tours and festivals and events, visitors like to keep the maps as a memento. And if you've got your brand identity all over them, that can only be of benefit to you in the long term. So how can illustrated maps work for you? First of all, we're going to look at tourism. So as I'm sure you're aware, wine tourism is on the rise. More and more people are travelling to areas, not just for holidaying, but they want to experience the location. They want to connect with the people that live there and have experiential activities, including wine visits. So it's a unique type of cultural experience specific to the location. Travellers can journey to vineyards, festivals, events, markets, and indulge their palate. But they can also immerse themselves in the local traditions and communities. They want to hear the story behind the brand and the area. This type of experience creates enjoyment for the traveller that encompasses the whole of the region, and it educates them as well. Studies have found that the growth in wine tourism is a driver for social and economic development, especially in the rural areas. This is because of the collective lifestyle experience. And the demand for tours to vineyards is increasing. Tourism agencies are starting to promote wine trails alongside beer trails. A well-designed map can influence tourist activities. Many maps in the informational brochures at the moment suffer from poor design. They don't engage the potential visitor. If you use enticing illustrations to market your campaign, your event, your destination, you can really engage with them and get more visitors. So on to ways you can use maps within wine tourism. If you work for a tourist agency, you could advertise individual vineyards, or you could look to creating a route or a wine trail. These take in numerous locations and activities, and mapping all the vineyards together makes planning a trip for a holidaymaker so much easier. Studies have found that tourists follow suggested routes and travel to recommended areas. They're looking to seek the social experiences, so take advantage and advertise them as one whole route and journey for them. So maps are a great channel for, maps therefore could be used to channel desired tourist activities. Google typically sticks to the quickest route possible, but when you use a custom map, you can take in the back routes, which also add to the local activities within the area, something people don't always think of visiting. And it's not just the holiday maker that these maps are good for. Lots of companies are now doing team building experiences, and wine tasting is a great option for this. So here are some examples with varying styles. You can see that Missouri Wine here have created an online map. It's very clean, simple marketing, creating an online route for a road trip within the state. Grand Rapids Convention, this is a beer ale trail. They've gone for a much more fun, quirky, playful map design following around the city. And Le Map Bordeaux have gone that step further. They've created a very visual, colourful, impactful map, but they've added a lot of information about the specific sites, something that really educates the visitor so that they can learn about the places they're going to. So obviously we're here today to talk about wine, but I wanted to show how illustrated maps have already had such a huge impact in another area of the drink industry, and that's with beer. There's been a rise in experiential beer events and festivals year after year. And in the last 5 years, UK breweries have risen 64%. So beer trails are now being proudly promoted at local events, museums, historical buildings, festivals, alongside other tourist activities. So being on a trail or having a stall at an event will just get your brand noticed more and more and get you more customers and more followers. Here's an example by Brandywine Valley. You can see they've used an illustrated map across their digital and printed materials, and then they've also added in merchandise that can be bought at each location. So interactive maps. Obviously you have the printed version, but digital is becoming more and more accessible to people. People these days are using websites and social media more to plan and book their trips and excursions. So if you can incorporate an interactive map or a digital map within your campaign, you'll get much more engagement from potential customers. So continuing with the example of Brandywine Valley, they have come up with a personalised itinerary you can use on their website. So you have the illustrated map here with hover over icons featuring each of the breweries. If you hover over it, it will bring up the name. You can click through, and there's a side window that comes up with more details about that specific site. If you want to learn even more, you click through again, and it comes up with all the details, a 360-degree photography tour, and details on how to get there. You can then add this to your plan, and at the end you have your own personalised itinerary for all the breweries you would like to take in. Wineries, distilleries and breweries are at the forefront of a growing industry, and parts of Europe have already established themselves within the experiential tourist hotspots. But lesser known areas, like Romania, you need to get on the map. Now is the time to incorporate this into your campaign and become one of the big players. There are 3 types of wine tourists that you can cater for. First of all, you have the wine geeks. These are the people that want to know everything about wine. It is the sole purpose of their trip to that region. You then have the gastro tourists. These are the people where food and wine is a fairly important part of their trip, but it's not the sole purpose. They will pick their location based on other activities, hiking, biking, canoeing, theatre, but they'll also want to incorporate food and drink within their holiday too. Then you have the passerby. These are people that happen to be in a wine region, so think it would be a great advantage just to go and visit a vineyard, or take part in a wine tasting event. Here's another case study of another ale trail to show you how successful it's been. The North Lake Tahoe Ale Trail have created a really successful campaign here, which works for all types of wine tourists. Tourist agencies can use maps to showcase the full potential of the region, not just the wine elements. So the opportunity to sell the whole area and increase footfall is at its full potential. So this map, for example, shows all the different watering holes you can visit, the yellow icons there. This is great for the geeks. They know where to focus their attention on. But there's also all the hiking, biking, canoeing aspects highlighted as well, which caters for the gastro-tourist. They can incorporate both elements into their trip. But if you're a passerby on a bike trip, you might find that your route ends at a watering hole, and then you might be enticed to go into a vineyard or take part in a wine tasting class. So it caters to everyone and gets you new followers. This particular map is also great graphically because it's really simple to follow but highlights so many different key elements. You have simple colour coding, routes mapped out for you, all the nature and wildlife. You also have the hover over icons, which again pop up and show you more about the detail, so the visitor can learn more about the story of that area. So now on to how illustrated maps can be used in publications and blogs. There are so many magazines and blogs these days that cater just for travel. It's a fantastic way to show what Romania has to offer. They obviously feature all the new go-to places, which is great for the wine geek out there to find out the new go-to place and how they can incorporate food and drinks into their trip. In-flight magazines also feature illustrated maps. This is very common as it shows the incoming visitor new areas to visit that they might not have already thought of. Lifestyle and women's magazines also often have a travel section, suggesting a girly trip away perhaps, or if there's any special events and festivals coming up, they're highlighted too. Some examples here of Wine Spectator magazine. They often do features. This particular one is of the Italian wine regions. It's a very clean-cut, simple map featuring all the other sites that can also be incorporated into the trip. Going Places magazine, although this isn't a geographical map, it's still an illustration of the area and it captures the personality and vibrance that Seville has to offer. And of course, it's also got an indication of the food and drink that they can sell to you. Betty's Wine Musings blog is obviously specific to wine. This particular map features all the recommended wines of Portugal and some of her favourites too. The great thing about using maps is it targets more than one type of customer. Obviously, you've got the maps that cater for people who are planning trips, but there's even those people that are staying at home can benefit because magazines from supermarkets and even from restaurants these days, they will suggest a new wine from a specific region with a specific flavour, and you will be enticed to go out and try that wine. And with the increase in influencers these days, that's just going to build more and more. Maps can also be used as a sales tool. So following on from the customers staying at home and buying new wines, you could incorporate an interactive map in your direct-to-consumer sales. So similar to the interactive maps before, a consumer could look up a specific wine. They might want to try something from the northeast. They might want to try something with a specific flavour. So they'll use a search function to filter this down. Results would come up in an interactive map, and they could hover over, find out more details, and then click to add to their basket. Trailed sales could also incorporate interactive maps to show alongside statistics. What's the most popular wine at the moment? What region is selling best? What other areas need to be pushed? Maps are also fantastic educational tools, especially within wine tasting and wine tasting classes and lectures. Also appreciation classes. They don't just have to be geographical maps again. The first example here is an infographic showcasing the process. So it's a process map. This educates the newbie, the passerby, and helps to educate them in the whole process of winemaking. Alongside this, you can use the geographical maps to go into more detail on what areas and regions the wines come from, what flavours, etc. So they're the industries that can make use of maps, and here are some of the ways in which you can actually use the maps themselves. Some of the marketing materials that you can incorporate within your campaign to make them strong and stand out. Another side income, if you don't already have merchandise, it might be something to think about. Lots of people these days love having, love having some memento from their trip, and illustrated maps as prints are hugely popular. You also have the scratch map trend, and these are becoming more theme orientated. This second illustration here, photo here from Maps International, is a specific wine scratch map. So as you journey around the countries and you taste the wine, you can scratch off. This is great for the wine geek. And it turns out they even have a wine themed board game these days, so the possibilities are endless here. So that's what map illustrations can do for you, and now here's a little bit about what I do. I have a background in art and design, but I specialise in map and travel tourism and illustration. I have worked with various brands, from small local companies to charity theatres and large pharmaceutical companies. Every kind of company can work with illustrated maps. And alongside my freelance services, I also have a brand of homewares, so I have some of those in the foyer if you were interested in the gift area. I wanted to talk about that more. So we've discussed how maps are a fantastic tool for the wine industry, but there is a lack of map illustration in this area. If you Google Romanian wine maps, the results are very outdated. They need to be modernised to really fit with the big players out there. Incorporating them into your brand identity can really make you stand out against the big names like Italy and France. And I can work with you to provide bespoke illustrations, including maps, to fit your needs. I can incorporate your branding to help everything flow seamlessly throughout the promotional space that you'll be using them in. So we can make your brand stand out with everyone else. So here's a few case studies of maps that I've done, just to give you a bit of an idea of the style. This particular map was for an itinerary an alpaca farm were putting on to visit Peru for the Alpaca Festival. Welcome board for tourists, so when they visit your vineyard, they know all the different regions and areas of the map, of the area because of the map. This was a project to illustrate the various districts of New York and showcase all the different eateries, places to visit, landmarks, etc. It was for a hotel booking site, so they wanted the user to be able to look at and make their own decisions on where to stay. You could also incorporate photography within the illustration. So this particular example was a personal map for a holiday, but if you are planning a route around the area and taking in lots of vineyards and activities, you could add in your photography so they know exactly what to expect. This was an illustrated map, believe it or not, for a pub route. So all the pubs were based on fictional characters' names. And so it's just to give an idea of thinking outside the box. It's not just about a typical landmark situation. You can use any kind of graphics, make it fun, quirky, and engage the customers. Here are some types of stationery. So think about how you can use a map for your site on your business cards, on your website, any type of branding you can incorporate them into. And although this is not a map per se, it does show how an illustration can be broken up and used across various promotional materials. You've got posters, websites, flyers, stickers. So if you did choose to work with me, I would provide you with a very easy and enjoyable collaboration. working together to create something unique and bespoke just for you. Each project starts with a discussion on your requirements, so we get to know exactly what it is that you're after. And then I research all the elements that you would like incorporated. These are then drawn up and provided you with updates just to make sure you're happy with where we're going. All the elements are put together with any kind of branding you want included. And then once the final piece is created, you can do with it what you will, whether it's the website, printing posters, whatever your particular campaign is about. I really like to understand my clients' wants and needs so I can create the best piece of work that's specific for them. It's really important to learn what it is that they're all about and learn their story. I've created what is hopefully a streamlined process to ensure a hassle-free project start to finish. So let's work together and let's put Romanian wine back on the map.
Thank you very much. Questions? Who wants to be first? Silence again. Okay, then I will. Oh, okay, yes. Just a moment. Let me get the mic.
So if a winery has, if you do a map for a winery, is there a way that when you hover over, you can link to their products to directly buy from their site?
I believe that is possible. I'm not the technical side of things. I can just produce the graphics, but from what I've seen, there you can link in any way, whether it's e-commerce or to external sites, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, you pointed out that it's very important to have also a visual impact upon the clients. And as you also pointed out absolutely correctly, that in Romania we are lacking this kind of, let's say, tool to attract and to create or to, let's say, to interest clients. For me, the question is now, how would you approach, how would you begin to do that? Working, let's say we have 20 wineries in a region and they want to do something like this. Would it be a good idea for each particular winery to work with you alone, or to make first, let's say, a concept for all the wineries together and, let's say, to start to promote the region, and after that is settled, to, if a winery wants more, to tackle each winery itself? What would you recommend? How would you start from zero, from ground zero?
I think it would depend on what each of the wineries would want. Would they want to work together and create a route? Would they want to put something together? If you can promote the region as a whole, it can only help with tourism and the economy, drawing more and more visitors in. So if you can create a wine route that takes in all the different wineries or all the different activities that can then be promoted as a whole, users really engage with that because they will follow a suggested route. They'd also be able to see everything the region has to offer, not just a single winery, you know, that's quite a distance to travel to.
This is what I meant. So everything what was there, to put it on the map, and then if somebody wants, okay. How long, what time would you say it needs to find out if it works, if it's what we need or what this particular region needs? Is it 1 year, 2 years? How much time you have to invest to see the results of this kind of tool, that it works, or that we have to change something because it's not, let's say, it's not the right stuff what we would need for this particular region? What are the terms of time you would estimate?
I think that would depend on how it's advertised and that side of things, because if it's, you'd have to be featured on blogs, in travel magazines. It's not just a case of doing the illustration. You've got to get it out there with the people that can promote it for you. So however you work with the advertising agencies out there and magazines, influencers that can suggest as well. It's difficult to say. That's
no. I see your point, because this leads me to my next question. Seeing that printing in general, printing loses ground by the day, and I also do believe that, especially if it comes to wine, people love to have something real in their hands, so to grab something and to have something as a memory or whatever. How important, or let's say, how do we see it? Also in the future, let's say in 10 years, will there be also importance of something printed as a paper, piece of paper, piece of something you can hold in your hand? Or would you now put the emphasis more towards online, digital, and then, let's say, advertising tools? Like, we have it in the internet with apps and links which are leading them to the winery's website. Where do you see the more important begin? To have some, to give some to the client physically, or only to provide, let's say, informations and some pictures online? Where do you see the more important emphasis?
Well, more people are using digital, but equally, I know when I'm out and about, I like to pick up the flyers to see what's in the area. I still like to have my guidebooks to go through and make notes on. So probably more emphasis on the digital, just because that's how times are changing, but the printed materials are still very important, especially if you've got your brand on there. Somebody will keep that as a memento, and then it may be years down the line, but they might find it and plan another trip to the area, but then look you up online, because obviously those graphics might be outdated by then. But using them hand in hand together is really important, and that will just strengthen. It will hit all the target markets. You've still got the older generation that probably like more printed materials, but you've got the newer millennials that want to use online as their main tool.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? Okay, then thank you very much. A very interesting insight and something what we really lack in Romania. I think also this is what we discussed in the speech before, communication. And this is what we still have to learn, how to communicate in a more modern way or in a more profound way. Thank you very much for coming. And yes, hopefully we will develop in the way you are proposing this, because I think we need it. The products are already very, very good, but we have also to talk and to show more about them. Thank you very much for coming.